Welcome back to this episode of the Iowa Beef Collective. I am your host, Patrick Wall. We're here at the Bridgeview Center taping a number of episodes, and we're going to tape a couple episodes, actually, with some folks from the Iowa Corn Growers Association. With me here first is Jared Flaherty. Jared's a cow-calf producer, as well as a grain farmer, and has been quite involved with Iowa Corn Growers. And I think some of you might look at this episode and goes, why is he interviewing Iowa Corn? And I think hopefully we will shed light on what the Corn Growers Association does for your traditional cow-calf, maybe feed yard. We'll dig into that here, but to introduce yourself to the audience, where you're from, what you do, and then maybe your role as a farmer, livestock producer, and then how you kind of got into the Iowa Corn Growers Association and some leadership positions there.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Jared Flaherty. I'm from Clark County, a little town called Murray, one of the smallest schools in the state of Iowa. Grew up there. Went to college and came back, and wanted to farm, of course, and my dad said, well, you're welcome to use my equipment, and you have to make your own way. I had a neighbor who was a World War II veteran that had some pasture that wasn't being used. The reason it wasn't being used is because the fences were shot. So like every young man, I thought maybe I'll trade some of my labor for a good deal. And I started with borrowing the money and bought 50 cows. And that's how I got my start. When I was away at my college, my grandfather calved my cows for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a guy.
I've had a lot of help along the way.
Good.
And that same landowner who had unused pasture had 200 acres of pretty good ground that was in CRP, and it came out about that same time. So I was able to rent the farm ground, and that started my row cropping enterprise. From there, we've just a traditional Southern Iowa farm. In a lot of ways, cows were the main enterprise, the moneymaker, and then in recent years, the row crop has maybe supplanted that, just like on most Southern Iowa farms. But the cow-calf's just been a really integral part of my operation, my family's operation through the years as we've been farming there in Clark County.
And I think there's maybe a misconception out there that everybody that's involved with the Iowa Corn Growers has thousands of acres and they're a big grain farmer, right? You have found a niche within Iowa Corn to kind of not only help your own operation, but maybe bring some perspective to the leadership positions of Iowa Corn. So let's dig into what you have volunteered for, or what your role has been with Iowa Corn, and maybe what that did for you when you took it back to your home operation.
The best part about Iowa Corn is they like to ask, and if you say no, there are unlimited opportunities. So if you say yes, there's just the opportunities are endless. I've been on the Animal Agriculture and Environment Committee. We spend a lot of our time talking about environmental issues, and we give a lot of our budget toward the animal side. We've supported a lot of programs in the past. Mainly, most of our support goes to USMEF, and that's where we've been involved, and I've been involved with how they're investing our checkoff dollars. Iowa Corn's been just an eye-opening experience to me to be around other farmer leaders who are positive and who are willing to do what's best for the farmers in their area. You know, in my area, everyone has a cow-calf herd. So I feel it's my responsibility to represent the cow-calf side of Southern Iowa on the Corn Growers Board. We look for ways to make sure there's a vibrant cow-calf industry in Iowa. We spend time discussing what CRP does for the cow-calf side, the positive and negatives of that, how we can get more cows back on the land in Iowa, especially in Southern Iowa. We've even ventured into the role deer hunters have played in the marginal lands in Southern Iowa, and what that's done for our small communities when those lands go out of production and then become recreational areas, how that's impacted small towns across Iowa. My hill all willing to die on is a fence law.
Oh boy, we could have a whole episode on that alone.
Non-negotiable for me.
Yep.
Any industry that doesn't support the fence law, I won't volunteer another hour of my time to. And Iowa Corn's really supportive of the fence law, and they're really supportive of cow-calf industry in general, and I think that support's really grown through the years of my being on the board and being around people, is the understanding we need cows and we need to feed cattle in Iowa and chew through this massive corn supply we have.
And I think if the viewers get nothing else out of this episode, it's that Iowa Corn spends a big chunk of their money on an acronym that maybe they don't even know what it is: USMEF, U.S. Meat Export Federation.
Correct.
Um, I think there's a lot of maybe misconception out there that corn growers support corn producers and those that grow corn. The best way to support somebody that grows corn is to give them a market for it.
Absolutely.
Nothing's better here in Iowa than creating a market for corn than a four-legged critter that makes meat. So I'm glad to, I guess, get that story or help Iowa Corn get that story out there that they don't just spend money on helping a corn farmer. They spend money on helping corn farmers create a market by supporting the meat industry as well. I guess, from the environmental standpoint, I think there's maybe some misconceptions there. So let's dig in a little bit on the environmental side. What sort of you mentioned a hill to die on the fence law. Environmentally, where has Iowa Corn's focus been, maybe as it relates to animals, deer, wildlife, any of that sort of stuff?
All of our policy eventually has to go through a grassroots process before we can truly, as a board and as an organization, take a stand on issues. So Iowa is a very diverse state. Sometimes the consensus we come to isn't necessarily my personal consensus, but we've been able to achieve some gains on like the issue of raccoons, and it may seem trivial to some, but the
Sure.
damage of wildlife. Deer's a little more trickier issue. There's a little more diverse ideas about deer. We've consistently advocated for a smaller deer herd and a more well-managed deer herd. We found run into some regulatory issues dealing with different aspects of the deer population in southern Iowa. It's one of our in District 8. It's one of our main discussion topics is deer damage and the size of the deer herd in southern Iowa. And so we wrestle with and we discuss with other districts and other parts of the state of how that process should eventually work its way out and what our stance is going to be. But the environmental and the wildlife side is a tricky topic for us to work through.
And I think we don't have to dig into exactly what policy standpoint Iowa Corn has on this or that, but so far we're on an Iowa Corn podcast at a cow-calf conference, and we've talked about raccoons, deer, meat, and we haven't even mentioned corn once yet. And I think that's the whole point of us having you on. You folks support the livestock industry in ways that most people maybe don't understand or realize. So I guess there should be a bit of a reckoning there, and I'm glad to get that position, if you will, out there. But one of the last things that I need to talk to you about, and this might be something that hits home a little more for the audience than maybe any other, is there's a proposal on the table for Iowa Corn to support the new beef teaching farm at the Iowa State University. And as an alumni who went there many, many years ago, we needed one when I went. I know it's been a great big effort. But first of all, thank you for even considering the proposal. But just another thing that Iowa Corn supports financially that doesn't have anything to do with a corn plant. If you want to comment on where that process is and on maybe some of the proposals that come at Iowa Corn from a support standpoint, summarize whatever you feel like you need to.
Well, we're really in the beginning stages of even the conversation. I think at our last board meeting or maybe committee meeting, they came and presented, and they showed some pictures of the facilities, and they discussed the condition the facilities were in. And the main takeaway I had was, like most farms, they decided to build in the wettest spot on the whole farm where the water drained to. And,
Yep.
felt like maybe we were at home where Grandpa took the one spot he couldn't grow something. So we built some handling facilities there.
Yep.
They discussed that, and then they discussed maybe even the safety issues and they discussed the fact that, Iowa State wants to be a leader, and they want to be a leader in the cow-calf sector as well. And a teaching farm maybe doesn't reflect where they want to be, or who we are as a state and as a university, and looking around some of the other states, what their facilities are like. Maybe we're missing out on some opportunities, and we're really just in the beginning stages, but it's clear there's a need, and I don't know what part Iowa Corn's going to play. That's not up for me to decide, but it maybe us as a board. But we value what a new facility would bring, the value there. We value that. We value what the cow-calf sector does to promote corn grind in the state of Iowa.
Sure.
We think it's a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful idea, but I can't comment on how we're going to support it financially yet. Other than it's amazing product. They've thought through most of the angles, every
Sure.
criticism we could bring. They had they thought about that. Just stuff like urban encroachment. We're sitting there in a board meeting and thinking about urban sprawls, rapidly encompassing the facility, and what's that going to look like in 10 or 20 years. And then they thought that all through. So it was a nice proposal, and very modern facility, and excellent proposal.
And I look at that selfishly because I was an animal science student there, but I'm a farm kid. We had corn and soybeans too, and it is probably maybe more of a significant recruiting tool for the kid that raises corn and soybeans and has some cows or pigs or a livestock enterprise. So there is some cross referencing there, if you will, on how Iowa Corn and supporting even a beef teaching farm really benefits the state. So I appreciate you coming on and joining us and kind of digging into what your role was with Iowa Corn, or is with Iowa Corn, and what that organization does for your typical beef producer. So appreciate you joining in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. This episode, I'm with Becca Aronson from the Iowa Corn Growers Association, and your job, in a nutshell, is market development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some perspective to be gained here for our audience, because market development doesn't mean we develop a market for somebody else in Iowa. It's global.
Yes.
So corn has a global market,
Mm-hmm.
and Iowa Corn works on that as well. So introduce yourself to the audience, what your job title role is, and give us the 30,000-foot view of a day in the life of you at Iowa Corn.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, my name is Becca Aronson. I hail from East Central Iowa, grew up on a grain livestock operation over there, cow-calf operation. And so came to Iowa Corn in the market development space, like you mentioned. I think a lot of people get tied up in, is it like grain marketing? Like market development's in the title. So really building that market out for our farmers, trying to make farmers as profitable as possible. So their checkoff dollars will come into our market development budget, and really we're trying to leverage that, whether that's internationally, domestically. We work with cooperators such as U.S. Meat Export Federation, U.S. Grains Council, and really internationally, they are our boots on the ground. So they have offices all over. They're constantly doing promotions, whether that's through red meats, corn-fed red meats, beef and pork, or through U.S. Grains Council. It's in the DDG space, ethanol, just really trying to ensure that we're leveraging all that we can in international markets. So day to day, things can be all over the place, whether that's setting farmers up for international missions. We actually just had a farmer this week. He was in Colombia, and he was speaking to the corn quality that he had this last harvest. So speaking to buyers and sellers down there, and trying to get out the word that we have plenty of corn here in the United States, and especially here in Iowa, and hopefully they become more frequent customers of that product. So whether it's trade missions that way, or we'll even bring trade teams in from other countries. Like we hosted a group during World Pork Expo that was from Latin America, Mexico. They buy a lot of hams, corn-fed hams, and we also export a lot of corn down there to Mexico. So a lot of international relations, but also doing things domestically with our, domestic commodity groups, whether Iowa Cattlemen's, Iowa Pork, different things like that. So it's quite a variety, but it keeps it fun.
And I think we have probably as good of example as I can come up with, about 50 feet that way.
Yeah.
So Iowa Corn is sponsoring a reception here at the conference, and we are consuming corn-fed beef
Mhm.
in a Taste the Difference event to try to bring people in to try different kinds of beef. Obviously, corn's involved in that transaction. And then there's hors d'oeuvres that are offered to the attendees here that are all corn based. And yes, this is a family show, but there's free beer here too, which is corn based as well.
Yeah.
So I think, that's a good snapshot of what the dollars that producers invest in the Iowa Corn Growers Association actually do for them.
Absolutely.
And your role kind of takes that and I guess puts it on a global stage
Mhm.
because we trade corn globally,
Mhm.
but I don't think that just happens overnight
Right.
because there's more than one place to buy corn in this world.
Yes.
So you have to differentiate your product versus maybe somebody else's,
Mhm.
and that's where your role comes in.
Absolutely.
So you've talked about a few trade missions here and there. Do you get to travel yourself to some of these, and maybe what's your favorite?
Been blessed to have the opportunity to go on 2. I traveled with Secretary Mike Nag, and several of the other commodity groups. 2 years ago, we went to Mexico, so one of our largest markets there. Great partnership there. And then most recently, I traveled to South Korea with U.S. Meat Export Federation. So South Korea remains, I think they're top 4 for pork exports, and then they
Right up there for beef
yep,
too.
number 1 for
Yep.
beef. So, that was really, really neat to see how they're utilizing, they're utilizing different cuts than we would here. We're used to getting those ribeyes or the prime cuts of beef. They're taking things, whether that's, intestines or just different,
Oxtail and
yeah,
stuff like that.
oxtails,
Yeah.
different elements, and combining that into dishes that they can enjoy not only for themselves but families as well. So, and that population is huge. You think
Sure.
South Korea is the size of the state of Illinois, and there's 50 million people that live there. It's crazy. So,
Lots of mouths to feed.
lots of mouths to feed. But yeah, probably the most interesting part of that was just seeing their supply chain and logistics. They are quick and easy with that, but then also the meal kit service is really, really big over there for that population.
So I'm just going to take a leap of faith here that somebody listening might listen to what you just said and go, "That sounds like a cool job."
Yeah.
What is your training? What's your
Yeah.
degree in? What sort of work experience do you need to have a job like yours? That's that fun that you get to travel the globe and promote corn and livestock both at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So went to Iowa State, studied ag communications, and actually minored in agronomy, and then went into the seed business. I worked for Pioneer for a while, and I went on a couple study abroads in college with the College of Ag, and I thought, man, that's really cool seeing ag on an international scale, but I never quite knew how that would be integrated into a full time career. And so when I came to Iowa Corn and the market development position was opened, and this international ag scope of it, I had no idea about. And so, really being able to capitalize on my experience from college and then bring it forth in the professional space has been awesome. So, you can literally do anything through, I mean, I'm biased. You can do anything if you get your degree from Iowa State.
Shameless plug, right?
Shameless plug.
So let's talk about kind of what's next. All right.
Yeah.
Corn carryout is large.
Yes.
Our U.S. cow herd is not.
Mhm.
So if there's an avenue where you think maybe corn can get exported or used,
Yeah.
where are we headed next?
Yes. I definitely would keep your eyes out for just that Southeast Asia market as a whole. Populations like Vietnam, Indonesia, some of those markets continue to have more people. There's more people there, but also they're becoming more developed in the sense of they're wanting that high quality protein, corn fed protein, and obviously all populations need protein, right? So I would definitely keep our eyes out for Southeast Asia. We're really trying to infiltrate the market. And then also remain strong partners, obviously, with Mexico, South America. You think of Colombia, some of those markets, but also our heavy hitters like Japan and South Korea.
Sure.
We got to keep those relations tight knit.
And I think, if the listeners get nothing else out of this episode, it's that Iowa Corn paid to send one of their marketing folks to South Korea to the Meat Export Federation. Didn't even necessarily have anything to do with corn,
Right.
but we're trying to market corn through the meat that we also produce. So
Absolutely.
that is a huge, huge parallel that I think our producers need to understand. So
Yes.
I appreciate you coming on. It's always fun to hear what different aspects of the industry actually do for us. And
Yeah.
cool job. I'm actually envious sitting here knowing what you get to do and where you get to go. So
Thank you.
kudos to you. But thanks again for joining us here on the Iowa Beef Collective. I am your host, Patrick Wall. Keep tuning in every week. We'll come at you with topics to try to educate you from our new platform here. Find us on the socials on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, excuse me. Follow us on Facebook at the Iowa Beef Center. Appreciate you joining in.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/legal.